and welcome to our weekly webinar. This week we're joined by Georgia Pullen. Georgia is a graphic designer. Georgia, would you like to
Hi.
introduce yourself?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much sums me up, doesn't it? um,
Well, you're being
yeah, so
very
I'm a graphic
modest, but
designer. I've just completed the MA Visual Communication Masters at Solent. Absolutely loved it, but yeah, kind of glad it's done now. It's been a long 2 years.
I can imagine. Georgia has been very proactive actually with our work at Solent Creatives, actually with our freelance jobs. You've done quite a few projects over the past 2 years. Um, I think even in the past 6 months, you have at least five
Yeah,
projects done, I think, or so. Um, Now, what is quite intriguing about you is that your undergrad degree is actually not in graphic design,
yeah,
is
that's right.
linguistics.
English language and linguistics, so quite different.
Oh, how did you manage that? How can you how did you? I know you were quite passionate about graphic design before and photography,
Mm-hmm.
but how did you go from linguistics to a master in visual communication? Considering you only had practice, really, you've done it purely for theory. I know you said that. So.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, with the undergrad, it was very much a case of trying to do something a bit more academic at university. But I was always kind of doing graphic design in the background. I studied at A level. I did a diploma in graphic design. Um, so yeah, tried to do something a bit more academic. Realized it's not for me. I'm a creative, so yeah, kept kind of doing a lot of graphic design freelance work. Did a lot for the company that I was with at the time, and just kind of went from there. I ended up moving to a couple of different graphic design companies, until where I am now, and then just kind of felt like I needed to study a little bit more to kind of get that theoretical background to it, to kind of know what I'm actually talking about, really.
Yeah, yeah. You were actually, I think you said you were a little bit pressured by your parents um to follow the linguistics course because graphic design does not put bread on the table.
Yeah,
Um,
and the irony is that I'm now in a really great graphic design job that I love, and
you have a
yeah,
lot of bread on your table,
it was definitely a
basically.
case of kind of parents saying, "Oh, you should do something, that you'll get a job in, and creative industry isn't great for that." Um, and I do wonder what would have happened if I'd have studied graphic design at undergrad level. I might have had a completely different experience. But yeah, I've kind of gone a slightly different route to where I am now.
Were you in any circumstances, you know, did you take advantage of your skills in linguistics at all while working as a graphic designer?
Yeah, interestingly, I do quite a lot of copywriting for my current company,
Okay.
which I obviously wouldn't have been able to bring to the table without that kind of background. And it's something that's kind of developed as I've kind of been working for them. I started proofreading things, I started writing things, and then I got to a point where they were like, "Actually, you're quite good at this." So I produce kind of a monthly newsletter, and for that I write all of the content, all the articles, things like the
Okay, so
welcome
a
note and
graphic
stuff like
designer
that.
with copywriting experience as well.
Yeah.
That's great, actually. That works pretty good. Um, did did you plan that at all when you said, "Well, I'm going to visual communication, I might use that," or was it just a nice surprise?
Yeah, it just kind of came with the job, really. It wasn't something that was in my job description at all. And I think as graphic designers, a lot of the time, you don't kind of look at the actual content and you don't really look at the words. I know graphic designers who say we literally just do the visuals. We don't actually read any of the articles. But I think it's quite important because if you're producing something, it needs to be well written. It needs to be grammatically correct. And as the graphic designer, you're almost the gatekeeper for that. So it's definitely a good kind of combination of the skills.
Fair enough. Is there any other particular skills that kind of stood out these past years as a graphic designer that you might need?
Um, Definitely a bit of photography has come in handy. I kind of studied a few elements of that for A level. So for instance, I'll take all the staff photos, I'll take office photos, and then it also kind of helps with that editing side as well. So if you're working on a graphic design piece and it's got those photos in it, and you kind of need to know how to edit them, that's definitely come in useful.
Okay, and what type of photography have you done before? Because I know now you're doing all types of graphic design. You're doing logos, posters. Um, I don't know. What you could tell me more about that probably. But what kind of photography have you done before?
Just a bit of everything really. So a lot of it is kind of staff headshots. So when we get a new staff member, we'll do a really nice little photo shoot, and then that goes on all of our internal communications as well as external, and then just kind of general scene shots, that sort of thing. Nothing too technical. I wouldn't really say I'm a professional photographer, but it's nice to be able to kind of get involved with
You
those.
were slightly passionate about photography. Were you passionate about the art side of it? You know, photos of landscapes, views, things like that, or was it always people? You know,
Yeah,
headshots.
usually something with kind of a bit of context. So something that you're trying to convey a message. So a location or a person or personality.
Okay. Okay. So more of a message than a vibe, as they say.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's good. How did the lockdown really affect? Because you did say you were creative, and you are a big creative. We're proud to work with you. How did the lockdown affect your creativity? Because obviously, someone with your type of workload, you've actually, as I said, you worked on quite a few projects during lockdown. How did that help in any way, or was it harder to do?
It was definitely a challenge, and I know we've talked about before. Sometimes you can kind of feel a little bit stifled in those situations. One of the things I found was just kind of sitting down at my desk 9 till 5 really, really helped. Particularly, I got furloughed from my full-time job, so I was a little bit like, oh my god, what am I going to do? So I gave myself that routine, and then it obviously allowed me to have a lot more time to take on new projects, and to kind of block out time to work on things. I know as a designer, we're quite bad for being like, oh, it'll only take a day, and then kind of 4 days later you're still working on it because you want it to be perfect. But it's definitely taught me how to kind of manage my time, and that's obviously something I do in my job as well. So being able to kind of take those elements of working 9 till 5 into my freelance work and the projects I've done with you guys has been quite interesting, and I don't think that would have happened without lockdown.
Yeah, a bit of discipline, basically,
Hmm.
kind of taught
Hmm.
you that. Now let's talk a little bit about one of your project because I know it was a quite nice project, the hate crime project.
Yes, that was an interesting one.
Let's talk a little bit about that.
Hmm.
How did you find the project? What was it about? And you worked with some kids as well, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So the idea of it was to take some designs that had been made by children and vulnerable people with disabilities, and turn them into kind of slightly more professional looking posters because they've kind of been drawn by hand and used stickers, and they were really, really cute. But the organisation wanted them to be something that could then be used around the buildings and kind of put out on a wider scale. So it was very interesting trying to take the designs that had been done by somebody who's probably not, a designer, who doesn't really know much about that, and then kind of turn them into something that's a little bit more polished and a little bit more professional. It was, yeah, definitely an interesting one.
And how did you manage? Because obviously you when you have clients, you have to maintain a certain conduct, certain kind of way of
Yeah.
talking. How did you adapt to this new environment?
I definitely tried to keep the lines of communication going. I think the client was quite particular about what he wanted, but it was quite difficult to communicate that early on. So I started off by kind of giving him a couple of different options. So one option that looked quite a lot like the original designs by the children, and then one that was a lot more kind of polished, a lot more kind of everything was rejigged and the layout adjusted and that sort of thing, but still kind of had those initial elements from the original designs. So I kind of gave him both of those and said, which direction do you want to go with, and then let's just roll. And so we kept up communication throughout. I kept kind of sending him drafts as we were working on them. He gave me quite a lot of feedback, which was really, really helpful.
How much interaction have you had with the children? Have you had any at all?
No, other than the seeing the actual posters, no.
Oh wow, that would
It
have
would
been
be
nice.
so nice to actually kind of meet them and say, like, what do you think of the finished designs?
Yeah, hear their opinions, and see
Yeah,
who actually drew what. That would be
yeah,
quite
exactly.
nice actually. I'm not very up to date with that project actually. Have they been made public yet? Is
Yeah, I
there
think they're in the
anywhere people
process
can
of it.
access them?
Yeah, yeah. We completed the project, and he's quite happy with them, sending them off to print. And yeah, hopefully they'll be up and about.
Around Southampton?
I think initially in the locations where the kind of children are, and I can't remember the name of them. They're like NHS
Okay.
buildings where they work with kind of vulnerable people and people with disabilities.
Okay, so there we go. If you see any kind of a hate crime poster that looks particularly funny, Georgia has done it. So you've heard it here first. Solent Create. Okay, yeah, that's CO in the background. Well done, Georgia. We're very proud of your professionalism and speedy execution.
Thank you.
Speaking of that, CO is finally back with us this week. In the background, running everything. I'm not sure if he wants to say hi. I think not. Maybe next time. Um, but yeah, so that is the hate crime project. That's quite nice actually. You've also done just so we put people in the right perspective of what's going on here. You've done art stuff, you've done fun stuff, but you've also done things where your creativity doesn't really have a lot of input, but it's the job itself.
Hmm.
Um, so can you give us an example of a logo or something that was basically you had the idea, you had everything, you just had to do it. Use your only
Yeah,
your technical skill.
yeah. I recently completed a project for the NHS in partnership with a guy called Shaquille at our university. And it was very much like taking what they'd given you on a Word document, putting it into a document, and just making it a little bit more visually interesting, a bit more readable, kind of adding some kind of infographics and that sort of thing. But yeah, that wasn't massively creative. It was very text heavy. It was quite technical. And I know initially a couple of the kind of cover design options I sent to them were quite creative, and they said to me, a little bit too creative.
Oh, okay.
Which happens all the time. You get kind of used to it. So I kind of had to strip it back, and they showed me an example that was very, very basic. And I said, okay, I'll kind of go for something in the middle. I'll go for something that is quite basic but still has like a nice design feel to it.
Okay,
And
so
yeah, that.
creativity is a double edged sword, really. You can
Hmm.
overdo it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So does that happen quite a lot for you?
Sometimes, I mean, it entirely depends on the client. Sometimes you get ones who kind of say, go wild, like be as creative as you want to be, and that's really exciting. But yeah, sometimes you get the ones who do want something a little bit more simplistic, and you've got to adapt to that. But I think it's adding in the little elements that make it a bit more interesting and that kind of keep you on your toes. So making infographics and making I did like a map of Wessex and where all the different locations were. And so rather than just, getting something boring off the internet, I kind of made my own one and was able to be a bit more creative with that.
That's very nice. What are the oh, CEO is having has a question. What are the benefits of working as a freelancer during a global pandemic? Benefits.
There's
Tough one.
benefits and yeah, pros and cons. I definitely think there's kind of a new need for things. So, for instance, I've been working on a lot of um, COVID secure posters. So things like, maintain social distancing and here's how you wash your hands and things like that. And there's a
Keep
huge need
people
for that.
arm's length and yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So there's quite a lot of kind of graphic elements to that people need at the minute. Um, it's also a challenge, particularly at the start. I had a lot of my freelance clients were kind of a bit, well, we don't know how things are going to go. We don't know if the business is going to survive. So they just kind of put everything on hold. But now things are kind of getting a little bit back to normal. And they've kind of come back to me and said, yeah, we're ready to go ahead with the projects. So it's been an interesting one.
And regarding, because you do have a day-to-day job, not just
Hmm.
freelance, where you do design,
Yeah,
right? You said you have quite a varied input of creativity in that, so it kind of
yeah.
it's almost like your dream job. Can you talk a little
Hmm.
bit about that job,
Yeah.
about how you're dealing with it? Why do you like it so much, and how did you get it?
Hmm. So I'm an in-house designer for a fintech company. So rather than being a designer who works for an agency where you get tons of different clients and different brands, I kind of manage just the core brands that my company works with. And there's a couple of different brands, so that keeps it interesting. But what I particularly like is they give me so much creative control over things, and they're so open to new ideas. And that's not really something that I've had in previous roles. And they've been quite regimented, and they've had, quite archaic systems where they kind of said, we've always done it this way, so keep doing it this way. But where I am now, they're so open to new things and trying out different methods of marketing and experimenting with stuff, and that's been
Not
really,
afraid
really
of
great.
change, really.
Exactly, yeah. And
Okay.
they like me kind of bringing my knowledge and experience and things that I've learned to the table, and kind of saying, oh, I've seen this new style of, I don't know, illustration, and let's give it a go. They're very open to that sort of stuff, which is really cool.
All right. That's good. So now present day, coming back to present day, um, what is your future plan now? You've completed your degree. You're doing quite a fair amount of freelance projects. You have a day-to-day job.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see yourself in the next coming years?
Well, short term, I'm kind of just relaxing now that now that I finished the masters, and just kind of put my feet up a little bit.
Well
Um,
deserved.
yeah, I'm definitely going to ask for a raise. But long term, I think as a designer, particularly a freelance designer, there's always kind of the end goal to be entirely freelance and to be your own boss, and to be able to design stuff on a beach in Thailand. So that's the long term goal. But it's very difficult to get to that. I know a few people who are quite close to making the jump from having a day-to-day job to being completely freelance, and it's really, really scary. You've got to have quite a lot of clients on a retainer, so they pay you kind of a monthly fee to work for them. And once you've got enough of that, you can then kind of make that step. But being able to build up enough freelance work whilst also having a regular job can be a real struggle, because you've got so much on.
Yeah.
So it's getting to that point when it's, becoming too much to do both, that I'm going to have to try and think about making that transition.
Do you think that point was very far away in the future?
Um, Not too far away, but it's definitely not something I'm
Do
thinking
you
about
feel
in the
like you
next
can
couple
still
of
juggle
years.
the
Yeah, yeah,
day-to-day job with the freelance job? Okay.
absolutely. And because I like my company and I like my job so much at the minute, I'm not really looking to leave anytime soon. It would just be kind of thinking long term. That's what I'd be looking for.
All right. And any mistakes you've done? Because who doesn't love a
Oh,
mistake?
always
Any
happens.
notable mistakes you've done at the beginning of your graphic design career that you could mention so our students wouldn't repeat the same mistake, hopefully?
I mean, you've got to make these mistakes to learn from them, right?
Of course,
Um,
obviously, yeah.
I definitely think if I look back at some of my earlier work, my earlier projects, kind of look at them and think, that's terrible. I could do such a better job now. But it's all about getting that experience, and you can only learn by doing the bad projects. Particularly being able to kind of get feedback from clients and get feedback from other designers has definitely helped. So yeah, I'd say don't be afraid to kind of ask other people's opinions. I think as a graphic designer, you can be quite precious over your work. You spend hours and hours on something and you think this is the best thing ever. But really, you're only seeing it from through your eyes. And sometimes you need somebody else to go, well, what about if we tried this option? Or, don't think that bit looks quite right. And so don't be afraid to ask for those kind of things. I think initially when I started out, I was quite shy to ask people's opinions, very protective over my work, and didn't take kind of criticism that well. And it's quite difficult to be able to do that and to learn to accept that criticism, because it'll only make you better at what you do.
Okay, so be open to ideas, be open to new views, really.
Absolutely.
Okay. And what would be the highlights of your past 2 years since you've started visual communication?
Um, Definitely finishing my final project, handing it in, and being like, I'm done, is the best feeling in the world. Especially with, obviously, my undergrad was, for the final kind of project was a dissertation, so it was completely written. And this was absolutely different. Everything was visual. I was creating kind of very complex animations and videos, and I actually prototyped an app for it, which is something I haven't really done before. I've kind of meddled with things in the past, but I've never created a fully functioning app.
Yeah.
So that was a massive highlight. And being able to complete all of that and hand it in early was just the best feeling in the world.
That implies a little bit of web developing as well, doesn't it?
A little bit, yeah. I do a little bit of web development for my current job. Not that keen on it though. It's a little bit techie for me.
But it's an extra skill you have,
Yeah, absolutely.
so
Yeah.
that comes in handy. Also, another question from CEO: do you think the variety of work we have provided has helped you discover something new about yourself creatively, personally, or professionally?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say it's definitely put me in touch with clients I perhaps wouldn't have had that opportunity to talk to.
Yep.
So some of the people I've worked with through Solent Creatives, yeah, I just wouldn't have made those connections and I wouldn't have been able to work with them. So it's
Have you
definitely
maintained
given me,
contact with any of the previous clients?
yeah, absolutely. A few have kind of said we're going to come back for further work down the line,
Mm.
which is really great. And yeah, just being able to kind of work on a variety of things. I mean, some of the stuff that comes through you guys is really, really varied, and it's great because it makes it interesting. And
It's challenging.
yes,
It is.
definitely.
All right. Um, okay. Any advice you would give to students watching this? Either students going through an undergrad course for graphic design or photography, or someone who's probably going through linguistics right now and thinking, "Whoa, I might actually do graphic design." Any
Hmm.
advice for them? What would be the next step? What would you tell yourself when you started?
I would say, and this is definitely something I did, it's just to keep learning and don't be afraid to keep learning stuff. So even now I'm still learning new programs, new ways of doing things. I'm constantly watching different tutorials if I want to try something new. So yeah, don't be afraid to keep learning things. And particularly if you want to make the jump into, from something more academic into something more creative, there's quite a steep learning curve to begin with, and you've got to commit to it, and you've got to be all in. You've got to be ready to take that jump and just go for it completely. And just keep like practicing and keep experimenting and things like that.
All right. And just one last question out of almost personal curiosity, really. You have web developing, you have graphic design, you have linguistics, copywriting. Is there any future skill you would like to learn that you think would help you, that you're planning on learning or something?
Yeah, I'd say particularly video editing. I've done a little bit in the past, little bits and pieces, but nothing to a big scale. And that's definitely something I'd be interested in learning more about. And we've got projects at work coming up where we're going to kind of be interviewing clients and going into their offices and setting up a little mini recording session. And that's going to be something that's really interesting and definitely a challenge. So that'll be exciting.
A bit like The Office. Oh, yeah, that'll
Yeah.
be interesting actually. That'll be really interesting. Well, all right then. I think that's it from us, really. Thank you for joining us today, Georgia. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for you know joining us and getting valuable insight from Georgia. As well, keep an eye out on our social media for next few weeks because we will have a blog post and hopefully there was some talk about you going into the local newspaper or something, I think.
Okay.
But we'll see. Thank you
Sounds
guys
good.
for joining. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. This was Robbie from Solent Creatives and Georgia.
Thanks a lot.